culture wars are things done by shameless people who are very focused, very professional, and who want to get their own way, whatever it is. I believe that in 2024, Culture Wars describes the very deliberate, planned exploitation, weaponization of cultural issues in order to benefit a particular financial or political interest. And often the two are very intertwangled. Culture wars are characterized by completely opaque origins. Where did that come from? Who exactly is the, so to speak, author? Who takes responsibility for this story if I try and trace it down? And it's always interesting to try and trace those stories. And also by opaque finances. How does that... It takes money to do culture wars. You need quite a lot of stuff. And you don't know who's actually doing it to you. And I've seen a lot of my friends, kind and well-meaning people, utterly fooled by these sorts of stories. So what the characteristics are: professionalism. Culture warriors are absolutely professional. They're mercenaries. The other thing that characterizes it, significant funding, lots of money. You remember just before the unpleasantness in Ukraine, there was the Russia report, which Boris Johnson kept over till after the 2019 election was over. Well, the Russia report said we were all being very confident, complacent about Russia and Russian money in British politics and so on, at a time when people were paying X 100,000 to play tennis with members of the Conservative cabinet and stuff like that. But what nobody has cared to point out is how much very odd American money there is in Westminster in particular things for particular reasons. Did you know, for instance, Tommy Robinson, you're all aware of little Tommy Robinson, who Steve Bannon thinks is the greatest Englishman who ever lived. And if you saw this particular clip, Liz Truss seemed to be agreeing with him. So Liz Truss thinks that Tommy Robinson is a great guy too. Who paid for Tommy Robinson? Richard. What?
Robert Mercer.
Well, that you're absolutely. It's very, very near. Steve Bannon admired him very much. The Mercers were very into that thing. Rich Americans, rich old angry Americans, who were very, very anti-Muslim, paid for Tommy. So, significant funding, lots of money, very difficult to trace, and very sophisticated relationships with what people call client media of all kinds. So you can't do culture wars without quite a lot of backup. You know, you have to be very, very well resourced. You have to know people. You have to be a very good storyteller. There has always to be a tiny grain of truth that you can use as an example. There has to be a tiny grain of truth, and you have to have very significant relationships with client media, which means there's a sort of, you all know the language of business, vertically integrated. It's a vertically integrated structure. So you have somebody who slips a couple of London think tanks some money to produce a report, which is smartly presented and by people who call themselves fellows as if they were real academics and so on. And they creep in everywhere. And where they creep in often includes those majority British national newspapers. We'll come back to the question of whether British national newspapers have any influence, but they do on your mother. Your mother's there at the end. So you might find that a report that somebody had wanted, which proved beyond doubt that special legislation to help, let's say, ethnic minorities was only going to harm them. And then, a month later, double-page spread in the Daily Mail, quoting the fellows, of research fellows and wonderful people at the XYZ quote-unquote think tank. So, what people used to talk about, describe culture wars as during the 20th century, particularly American, is if there was something very grandiose, the expression of a clash of values between two equally matched forces, progressives on the one hand, like 1968 student types, and traditional groups. And the people that Nixon would describe as the silent majority, behind their white picket fences, keeping the decencies of family and nation together. That's how but it isn't that at all. Culture wars are things done by shameless people who are very focused, very professional, and who want to get their own way, whatever it is. And it's often a substitute for politics when there is, when there isn't anything to boast about, and a wedge issue which you hope will divide your enemies. So, I am told that there are awful divisions between trans people and traditional lesbians. I have no way of knowing whether such a thing could be. I don't know whether you know about this, ladies and gentlemen, but this has been organised by Culture War. So it's emotive rather than rational. It's enraging and polarising. It gets you down there rather than up there. It worsens an existing conflict, or it enlarges on existing sort of secondary concerns, and it distracts people from big issues and lets you take the storyteller, the culture warrior, control the narrative, as people say nowadays. Take the initiative. It demoralises people because everything sounds so miserable and ghastly. It confuses them and leaves them open to the idea that what we need in this terrible place is a strong man stroke woman with an answer to the problem that they have invented. So it's meant to influence behaviour at an irrational level. Donald Trump's former enforcer, professional brain, Steve Bannon, Breitbart, Mercer's, all that stuff, said, I think it's a powerful and poetic turn of phrase, fill the zone with shit. That you should disinform, disorient, depress, and make people ready for an extreme idea, or a strong man with an extreme idea, or indeed a strong woman with an extreme idea. There's no shortage of them.
To continue watching this video, click the link in the top left or in the description below. Or visit iai.tv for more debates and talks from the world's leading thinkers on today's biggest ideas.